Aliens fired and SOS Deathworlders responded with brutal accuracy. The signal came from the edge of the Valari system, weak and broken, repeating the same message over and over again. Commander Lyris pressed her thin fingers against the communication panel, her silver eyes wide with terror. Behind her, the emergency lights flickered red across the bridge of the cargo vessel. Starlight Dream. The ship was never built for combat. It carried medical supplies, food containers, and 37 civilians who had no idea how to fight. "Please," Lyris whispered into the transmitter, her voice shaking. "This is Valari cargo vessel Starlight Dream. We are under attack. Our escort ships have been destroyed. We have civilians on board. Children, please. Anyone who receives this signal, we need immediate assistance. Our coordinates are being transmitted. We cannot survive another hour." The Krithak warship circled them like a predator playing with wounded prey. The Krithok were known across the galaxy as conquerors. They took what they wanted. They killed what they did not need, and they enjoyed every moment of suffering they caused. Their ships were black and sharp, designed to look like weapons themselves. The Krithok commander, a creature named Verax, watched the small cargo ship on his screen and smiled with rows of needle-like teeth. "They are calling for help," his second officer reported. "Should we jam their signal?" Verax shook his massive head. "Let them call. When the galaxy hear their screams, no one will come. No one ever comes. The Valari have no allies strong enough to face us. Their Galactic Council will debate and argue while we tear this ship apart. By the time they decide to act, there will be nothing left but dust." He was right about the council. In the great chamber on the station called Unity Prime, representatives from dozens of species watched the distress signal play on their screens. The Valari ambassador begged for help, tears streaming down her pale face. But the other species looked away. Some whispered to each other. Some simply left the room. "The Krathak are too powerful," one ambassador said quietly. "If we send ships, we will be their next target." "We should file a formal complaint," another suggested. "Document this violation of galactic peace codes." "Documents will not save those people," the Valari ambassador cried. "They are dying right now, while we sit here and talk." But no one moved. No one volunteered their ships. No one wanted to face the Krethok and their fleet of death. However, the signal did not only reach Unity Prime. It traveled through space in all directions, bouncing off relay stations and communication satellites, and one of those relays carried the message to a sector that most species preferred to forget existed. It reached a place called Sol System. It reached Earth. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the signal arrived at Earth Command. She was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Her face showed lines of age and stress, but her mind was sharper than a blade. She listened to the distress call twice, then pulled up the coordinates on a tactical display. "Valari system," she muttered. "That is deep in Krethok territory." Her aide, a young officer named Jackson, stood nearby with a worried expression. "Admiral, the Galactic Council has already received this signal. They have not responded. Perhaps we should follow their example. The Krethak have never attacked human ships. They leave us alone. If we interfere, they leave us alone because they fear us," Admiral Chen interrupted. "Not because they respect us. There is a difference." She turned to face Jackson directly. "Do you know what they call us out there? Deathworld. They think we are monsters because we come from a planet that tries to kill us every day. High gravity, extreme temperatures, predators, diseases, poisonous plants and animals, natural disasters. They cannot understand how anything survives on Earth, and they definitely cannot understand how we not only survived but became the dominant species." Jackson nodded slowly. "I know, Admiral, but that is exactly why we should be careful. If we show them what we can really do, then maybe they will think twice before attacking innocent civilians," Chen finished. "Maybe they will learn that there are consequences." She turned back to her display and began typing commands. "Get me Captain Marcus Drake. Tell him I have a mission for the Crimson Fury. Full combat readiness. We leave in 2 hours." The news spread quickly through Earth Command. Humans were going to answer the distress call. Some officers thought it was madness. The Krethak had a fleet of hundreds of warships. They controlled an entire sector of the galaxy. They had been conquering and killing for centuries. But others felt something different. They felt a fire in their blood, an ancient instinct that humans had carried since the beginning of their species. The instinct to protect. The instinct to fight. Captain Marcus Drake received his orders and smiled. He was a tall man with dark skin and a shaved head, covered in scars from battles he rarely talked about. His ship, the Crimson Fury, was one of Earth's newest warships. It was built not for beauty but for destruction. Its hull was thick enough to survive asteroid impacts. Its weapons were designed to punch through any armor, and its crew of 200 soldiers were the finest warriors humanity had produced. "Set course for the Valari system," Drake commanded. "Maximum speed." His navigation officer looked up with concern. "Sir, at maximum speed, we will burn through our fuel reserves. We might not have enough for the return trip." Drake stared at the officer with cold, steady eyes. "Then we will take fuel from the Krethak after we destroy them. Set the course." Now, the engines of the Crimson Fury roared to life. The ship shot forward like a bullet fired from a gun. Behind it, 3 more human warships followed. They were smaller but equally deadly. Together, they formed a battle group that had never lost a fight. Across the galaxy, in the Valari cargo ship, Commander Lyris continued her desperate broadcast. She had stopped hoping for rescue. She was simply recording now, hoping that someone would find the message later and know what happened to them. The Krithik had stopped firing for the moment. They were toying with her ship, waiting for the fear to build before the final attack. Lyris held her transmitter close and spoke softly. If anyone finds this recording, please tell our families that we tried. We tried to survive. We tried to call for help, but no one came. No one ever. She stopped mid-sentence. Her communication officer was staring at his screen with an expression she had never seen before. It was not fear. It was shock. Commander, he whispered. Another signal just entered our range. Krithik reinforcements. No, the officer's voice cracked. It is a response to our distress call. They are coming. They are coming fast. Lyris felt her heart skip. Who is responding? The officer looked at her with wide eyes. Humans, the death. They say to hold our position. They say help is coming. For the first time in hours, Commander Lyris felt something she thought she had lost forever. She felt hope. Verax was enjoying his meal when his tactical officer interrupted him. The Krithak commander hated interruptions. He had been savoring a live creature from his homeworld, feeling it struggle in his claws before he bit into its soft flesh. Such pleasures were rare during long missions. Commander, the tactical officer said with visible nervousness, we have detected unknown vessels approaching at high velocity. Verax dropped his meal and wiped his claws on his uniform. Unknown. Show me. The main screen activated, displaying for small dots moving through space at impossible speed. Verax studied the readings with growing confusion. No species in the galaxy had ships that moved so fast. The acceleration alone should have turned any crew into paste against the walls. What species? Verax demanded, checking databases. Now, Commander. The tactical officer's claws trembled as he worked his console. When the answer appeared, his face went pale gray. They are human ships, Commander, from the Sol system. The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. Verax felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. He felt uncertainty. Humans, he repeated slowly. The death. Yes, Commander. Verax had heard stories about humans. Every spacefaring species had heard the stories. They said humans came from a planet so dangerous that 90% of its surface was covered in a corrosive substance called water. They said humans had gravity so strong that most species could not even stand on their world. They said humans healed from wounds that would kill any other creature. They said humans had hunted their own planet's predators to extinction just for sport. But those were just stories. Verax had never met a human. No Krithak had. His people avoided the Sol system deliberately. Not out of fear, they told themselves. Out of practicality. There was nothing worth taking on that death world. How long until they arrive? Verax asked. At their current speed, approximately 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Verax looked at the cargo ship floating helplessly before him. 12 minutes to destroy the Valari and leave before the humans arrived. But something stopped him from giving the order. Curiosity, arrogance. He wanted to see these legendary Deathworlders for himself. He wanted to prove that the stories were exaggerated. Hold position, he commanded. When the humans arrive, we will show them what true warriors look like. Captain Marcus Drake stood on the bridge of the Crimson Fury with his arms crossed behind his back. He was calm in a way that made his crew nervous. They knew that the calmer their captain appeared, the more violent his plans were. Time to target, he asked. 6 minutes, Captain. Drake nodded. Tactical. Give me a full scan of the enemy fleet. The tactical officer worked quickly. Sir, we are reading 1 Krethik battlecruiser. Heavy armor, plasma cannons on multiple decks. They also have 3 escort destroyers positioned around the cargo vessel. Combined enemy forces significantly outnumber us. Significantly, Drake repeated with amusement. Define significantly. Approximately 5 to 1 in terms of total firepower, Captain. Drake smiled. It was not a friendly smile. So we are evenly matched then. Good weapons. Prepare all forward batteries. Load the kinetic pen. I want every gun ready to fire the moment we drop out of faster-than-light travel. His weapons officer hesitated. Captain, kinetic penetrators are designed for close-range combat. If we fire them immediately upon arrival, then we will be at close range immediately upon arrival, Drake finished. We are not going to dance around with these creatures. We are not going to exchange long-range shots and wait for them to surrender. We are going in hard and fast. The Valari on that cargo ship do not have time for a polite engagement. The crew exchanged glances but said nothing. They had served with Drake for years. They knew better than to question his methods. And deep down they felt the same hunger he did. The hunger to fight. The hunger to win. On the Krethok battlecruiser, Verax watched the approaching signatures with growing impatience. His officers were preparing weapons, running combat simulations, and checking shield generators. Everything was ready. The Krethik had conquered 100 species. They had destroyed thousands of ships. These 4 human vessels would be no different. They are dropping out of faster-than-light travel now. the tactical officer announced. The main screen flickered, and suddenly the human ships were there, but they were not where Verax expected them to be. Standard battle doctrine required ships to emerge from faster-than-light travel at a safe distance from any planet or obstacle. It required time to assess the situation, establish communication, and prepare for engagement. The humans ignored all of it. They emerged directly in front of the Krethok formation, so close that Verax could see the details of their hulls without magnification, so close that his shield officer screamed in alarm. They are within knife fighting range. The officer shouted. Our plasma cannons cannot track targets that close. Verax opened his mouth to give orders, but before any sound came out, the lead human ship fired. Not plasma, not lasers, something worse. Solid projectiles. Massive chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic rails. They did not glow. They did not flash. They simply appeared and punched through the nearest Krethok destroyer like it was made of paper. The destroyer did not explode. There was no fire in space without oxygen. It simply broke apart. Its hull split open. Its crew tumbled into the void. Its reactor went critical and tore the ship into pieces. Return fire. Verax screamed. All weapons. Destroy them. But his weapons were too slow. The humans moved like predators who had hunted this prey 1,000,000 times before. They split their formation, spinning around the Krethok ships with movements that should have been impossible. GI forces that would kill any other species barely slowed them down. Their ships danced through plasma fire that missed by meters, sometimes centimeters, and they kept shooting. The second destroyer died in flames. The third tried to flee and took 2 kinetic rounds through its engines. It drifted, powerless, bleeding atmosphere and bodies into space. Verax watched his escort fleet die in less than 60 seconds. His claws dug into his command chair hard enough to tear the metal. This was not battle. This was execution. Focus all fire on the lead ship, he ordered. Overload the forward cannons if you have to. Kill that thing. His battlecruiser's main weapon powered up. It was a massive plasma lance, designed to crack open planetary defense stations. Nothing in space could survive a direct hit from it. Verax smiled as his gunners targeted the human vessel called Crimson Fury. Captain Drake watched the energy readings spike on the Krethok cruiser. He knew what was coming. He also knew what to do about it. Helm, dive beneath them. Now, the Crimson Fury dropped like a stone, using thrusters that pushed it downward with brutal force. The crew was pressed against their restraints as gravity multiplied. Any other species would have blacked out. The humans gritted their teeth and kept working. The plasma lance fired. It missed the Crimson Fury by less than 10 meters. The heat alone scorched the ship's upper hull, stripping away paint and turning sensors to slag. But the ship survived, and now it was directly beneath the Krethok cruiser, aimed at its vulnerable underbelly. Fire everything, Drake ordered calmly. For kinetic penetrators tore through the Krethok cruiser's lower armor. They punched through decks, through crew quarters, through engineering sections. They did not stop until they reached the reactor, and then the largest warship in the Krethok fleet became a short-lived star. Aboard the Velari cargo ship, Commander Lyris watched the battle through a damaged viewport. She could not believe what she was seeing. The Krethok had terrorized her species for generations. They had seemed invincible, unstoppable, and the humans had destroyed them. In minutes, her communication officer was crying. Others were cheering. Some were simply staring in shocked silence. A new signal came through the communication panel. A human voice, deep and steady. Velari cargo vessel, this is Captain Marcus Drake of the Earth warship Crimson Fury. The threat has been neutralized. Please remain calm. We are sending medical teams to your location. Help has arrived. Lyris tried to respond, but her voice failed her. All she could do was whisper to words that she would repeat for the rest of her life. Thank you. The rescue teams arrived within the hour. Human soldiers in armored suits docked with the damaged cargo ship and moved through its corridors with practiced efficiency. Commander Lyris watched them work with a mixture of gratitude and something close to fear. These creatures were not delicate like her people. They were thick with muscle, heavy with bone, and their eyes moved constantly, scanning for threats that no longer existed. A human medic approached her. He was young by their standards, with light brown hair and a gentle expression that seemed strange on such a powerful body. Are you injured, Commander? He asked, his voice surprisingly soft. Lyris shook her head slowly. No, I am unharmed. Thank you for coming. No one else would come. The medic smiled. It was a warm expression that made her feel safe despite her instincts telling her to run. That is what we do, he said simply. We look out for each other, even species we have never met before. On the bridge of the Crimson Fury, Captain Drake was reviewing the tactical data from the battle when his communication officer interrupted him. Captain, we are receiving a distress signal from the planet below. Drake turned sharply. The planet. There are settlements on that planet. Yes, sir. Velari colonies. According to our scans, there are approximately 50,000 civilians distributed across 3 major cities. The officer paused, his face going pale. Sir, there are also Krethok ground forces on the surface. Thousands of them. They have been there for days. The colonists are trapped. Drake felt a cold anger settle in his chest. The attack on the cargo ship had not been random. It had been a distraction. The Krethik were not just raiding, they were occupying. They were taking the entire planet. What is the status of the colonists? Unknown, sir, but based on Krethik's standard operating procedures. The officer could not finish the sentence. Drake finished it for him. Based on their procedures, any colonists who resisted were killed. Any who surrendered were taken as slaves, and anyone who could not work was eliminated as a burden. He stared at the planet on his view screen. It was a small world, green and blue, peaceful from orbit, but he knew what was happening on its surface. He had seen what conquerors did to the conquered. Contact the other ships, he ordered. Tell them to prepare for ground assault. We are not leaving this system until every Krethok soldier is dead or surrendered. His first officer stepped forward with concern. Captain, we have approximately 800 ground troops across all 4 ships. Intelligence suggests the Krethik have at least 5,000 soldiers on the surface, plus armored vehicles and air support. The numbers mean nothing, Drake interrupted. They have quantity, we have quality. Get the dropships ready. We'll deploy in 2 hours. The Valari colonists in the city of Sunrise Valley had stopped hoping for rescue 3 days ago. The Krethik had arrived without warning, their ships blocking out the sun as they descended. The Planetary Defense Force had fought bravely but briefly. Now the surviving soldiers were locked in camps and the civilians were being processed for slavery. Elder Vosran was the oldest Valari in the city. His silver scales had dulled with age and his joints ached when he moved, but his mind remained sharp. He sat in the central plaza with the other elders, waiting for the Krethik to decide their fate. Around them, younger Valari huddled with their children, trying not to make any noise that might attract attention. A Krethok officer walked past, his boots heavy on the stone pavement. He glanced at the group of elders with contempt. These ones are too old for labor. Mark them for termination. Vosran closed his eyes. He had lived a long life. He had seen his children grow. He had served his community well. If this was the end, he would face it with dignity. But the end did not come. Instead, there was a sound from the sky. Not the rumble of Krethik ships. Something different. Something faster. Something angrier. Vosran looked up and saw objects falling through the clouds. They looked like metal eggs, burning red as they tore through the atmosphere, and they were heading directly for the city. The Krethok officer saw them too. His expression changed from confusion to recognition, to terror in the span of a heartbeat. He grabbed his communication device and screamed into it. Human drop pods. Human drop pods incoming. All units to defensive positions. This is not a drill. The drop pods hit the ground with impacts that shook buildings. They did not land gently. They did not slow down for soft touchdowns. They simply crashed into the surface. Trusting the humans inside to survive forces that would kill any other species than survive, they did. The first pod opened less than 20 meters from Elder Vosran. The human inside climbed out before the dust settled. He was massive by Valari standards, covered head to toe in dark armor that made him look like a machine rather than a living creature. His weapon was equally terrifying, a large rifle that hummed with barely contained energy. More pods opened around the plaza. More humans emerged. They moved in quick, practiced formations, weapons raised, eyes scanning. When the Krethok officer tried to raise his pistol, the lead human shot him without hesitation. The shot was clean, precise. The officer dropped before he could even aim. Sergeant First Class Michael Torres surveyed the plaza through his helmet display. His suit's sensors identified 53 Valari civilians and 12 Krethok soldiers. The soldiers were already falling back, retreating into the buildings around the plaza. They had not expected resistance. They certainly had not expected humans. Squad 1, secure the civilians. Torres ordered through his helmet. Come. Squad 2, form a perimeter. Squad 3, with me. We are pushing into the administrative center. A private named Chen appeared at his side. She was small for a human but moved with deadly grace. Sergeant, the Krethik are regrouping in the central tower. Estimated 50 hostiles. They have hostages. Torres nodded grimly. Then we go through the central tower. Tell the other squads to converge on my position, and remind everyone to check their targets. We are here to save people, not add to the body count. The Valari colonists watched in stunned silence as the humans moved through their city. These creatures fought like nothing they had ever seen. They did not hesitate. They did not flinch when plasma bolts exploded near their heads. They worked together like parts of a single organism, communicating through gestures and brief words, knowing exactly where each team member would be at any moment. Elder Vosran found himself standing beside a human soldier who had been assigned to protect the civilians. The soldier was young, probably barely an adult by human standards, but there was something ancient in her eyes, something that had seen violence and made peace with it. Why did you come? Vosran asked, his voice trembling. We are nothing to you. We have never even met your species before. Why risk your lives for strangers? The soldier looked at him with an expression that might have been sadness. Because you asked for help, she said simply. And because letting innocent people die when we could save them is not who we are. It is not who we choose to be. In the central tower, Sergeant Torres led his squad up stairwells slick with Krethik blood. The enemy was fighting hard now, understanding that there was no retreat. Plasma bolts flew through narrow corridors. Grenades exploded in confined spaces. Humans died. But more Krethok died. Many more. Torres kicked open a reinforced door and found himself in a large room filled with Valari hostages. The Krethok commander stood among them, using the civilians as shields, his weapon pressed against a child's head. "Stop," the Krethok screamed. "Come any closer and I will kill them all. Every single one." Torres stopped. He did not lower his weapon. He did not show fear. He simply looked at the Krethok with eyes that promised violence beyond imagination. "You have two choices," Torres said calmly. "Surrender now and live, or hurt that child and die in a way that will make your ancestors weep." The Krethok laughed nervously. "You humans think you are so dangerous. You think your reputation protects you, but I have nothing to lose. I will." He never finished the sentence. A shot came from behind him, through a window he had not bothered to guard. Private Chen had climbed the outside of the building, hanging from the ledge with one hand while aiming with the other. The bullet passed through the Krethok's skull without touching any of the hostages. Torres watched the body fall, then motioned for his squad to secure the survivors. The battle for Sunrise Valley was almost over, but the war for the planet was just beginning. News of the liberation of Sunrise Valley spread across the planet within hours. Valari resistance fighters who had been hiding in the wilderness emerged with renewed courage. Civilians who had given up hope began to whisper about the strange warriors from the Deathworld who had come to save them. And the Krethok, for the first time in their long history of conquest, we felt the cold grip of fear around their hearts. General Korath received the reports in his command bunker beneath the capital city of New Dawn. He was the oldest Krethok on the planet, a veteran of 100 campaigns, and he had never lost a battle. But as he read the accounts of human capabilities, he began to understand why his species had always avoided the Sol system. They fell from the sky in metal coffins, one surviving officer reported, his voice trembling through the communication channel. They hit the ground at speeds that should have killed them, but they climbed out and started fighting immediately. They do not stop. They do not tire. They do not feel pain the way we do. Another report was even more disturbing. Their weapons fire solid projectiles at supersonic speeds. Our armor is designed for plasma and laser weapons. The human projectiles punch through it like it does not exist. And when we wound them, they do not die. They wrap the wound with cloth and keep fighting. General Korath closed the reports and sat in silence. He had 20,000 soldiers under his command, spread across 3 cities and dozens of smaller settlements. He had tanks, aircraft, and orbital support. By any reasonable calculation, he should be able to crush 800 human invaders. But nothing about humans was reasonable. "Contact the fleet," he ordered his communication officer. "Tell them to send every ship they can spare. And tell them to hurry. I do not know how long we can hold." Captain Drake received the intelligence report about Krethok reinforcements while overseeing the humanitarian operations in Sunrise Valley. His expression did not change, but his officers noticed the slight tightening of his jaw. "How many ships?" he asked. 37 warships, Captain. They will arrive in approximately 18 hours. Drake nodded slowly. 37 ships against his 4. Even human technology and aggression had limits. If those reinforcements arrived, the battle for this planet would become a siege, and sieges meant dead civilians. "Then we have 18 hours to finish this," he said. "Tell all ground units to accelerate their timetables. I want every Krethok soldier killed or captured before those ships arrive, and I want the civilian population evacuated to safe zones where we can protect them." His first officer looked concerned. "Captain, that is an impossible timeline. The other cities are heavily fortified. General Korath has concentrated his forces in the capital. Taking New Dawn will require a full assault." Drake smiled grimly. "Then we will give him a full assault, but not the kind he is expecting." The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of attacking the Krethok positions directly, Drake ordered his forces to bypass the enemy strongpoints entirely. Human squads moved through the wilderness with speed and endurance that left their Valari guides struggling to keep up. They covered ground that should have taken days in mere hours. They did not sleep. They barely ate. They simply marched. Sergeant Torres led one of the advance teams through a mountain pass that the Krethok considered impassable. His squad climbed sheer cliffs with nothing but ropes and determination. They crossed freezing rivers that would have killed any Valari in minutes. The cold barely slowed them. Their bodies generated heat that kept them warm in conditions that should have been lethal. Private Chen walked beside Torres through the snow, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Sergeant, the Valari scouts say there is a maintenance tunnel beneath the capital's defensive wall. Apparently it was sealed decades ago, but the structure is weak." Torres studied the tactical display on his wrist. "How weak?" "Weak enough for demo charges, Sergeant." He grinned beneath his helmet. "Then we go underground." Meanwhile, Captain Drake was orchestrating a different kind of assault. He ordered his ships to engage the Krethok defensive satellites in orbit, drawing attention skyward while the ground forces moved into position. The space battle was fierce but controlled. Drake was not trying to win it. He was trying to create a distraction. General Korath watched the orbital engagement. from his bunker and felt a moment of satisfaction. But humans were making a mistake. They were fighting on multiple fronts, spreading their forces thin. Standard military doctrine said this was the beginning of the end for any invading army, but humans did not follow standard military doctrine. At exactly midnight local time, charges exploded beneath the capital's eastern wall. The blast was contained and precise, creating a breach just large enough for human soldiers to enter. Torres led his squad through the smoking gap, weapons ready, hearts pounding with the thrill of combat. Simultaneously, teams across the city emerged from sewers, climbed over walls, and dropped from rooftops. They had spent hours infiltrating the Krethok positions, waiting for the signal to attack. Now they struck from every direction at once. The Krethok defenders found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere. Humans appeared in their supply depots, destroying ammunition and fuel. Humans hit their communication centers, cutting off coordination between units. Humans attacked their command posts, killing officers before they could give orders. General Koroth tried to organize a defense, but his forces were scattered and confused. Every time he consolidated a position, humans would appear behind it. Every time he sent reinforcements, they walked into ambushes. The battle was not a battle at all. It was a systematic dismantling of his entire army. In the residential district, Valari families huddled in their homes, listening to the sounds of combat outside. They heard the sharp crack of human rifles and the desperate roar of Krethak plasma weapons. They heard screams in languages they did not understand. And slowly, gradually, the sounds of fighting moved farther away. A knock came at one door. A Valari father opened it hesitantly, expecting death. Instead, he found a human soldier standing on his doorstep, weapon lowered, hands spread in a gesture of peace. "Sir, you and your family are safe now," the soldier said. "We are establishing a secure zone 3 blocks east. Please gather your belongings and follow the marked path. Medical personnel are available if anyone is injured." The father stared at the soldier in disbelief. Behind the human, he could see Krethak bodies in the street, proof that the fighting had been real. But the soldier showed no signs of celebration or victory. He simply looked tired and determined. "Thank you," the father managed to say. "Thank you for saving us." The soldier nodded. "Just doing our job, sir. Now please, hurry. The night is not over yet." General Koroth made his last stand in the central bunker. His personal guard formed a ring around him, their weapons pointed at every entrance. He knew the end was coming, but Krethak did not surrender. Krethak died fighting. The door exploded inward. Smoke filled the room, and through the chaos came human soldiers, their armored forms barely visible in the darkness. They moved with impossible speed, their weapons finding targets before the Krethok could aim. Koroth raised his own weapon, but a heavy boot kicked it from his claws. He looked up at the human standing over him. Through the smoke and dust, he could see the creature's eyes. They were calm, patient, almost sad. "You are General Koroth," the human said. It was not a question. "I am," Koroth growled. "Kill me and be done with it. I will not beg." The human looked at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he lowered his weapon. "You are not going to die today, General. You are going to surrender. You are going to order your remaining forces to lay down their arms. And you are going to watch as we evacuate every Valari civilian you planned to enslave." Koroth sneered. "And why would I do any of that?" "Because if you do not," the human said quietly, "we will not be content with taking back one planet. We will follow your fleet home. We will find every world your species controls, and we will burn them all." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We know how to hold grudges, General. It is one of our less pleasant traits." For the first time in his long life, General Koroth understood what it meant to be truly afraid. General Koroth surrendered at dawn. His orders went out to every Krethak unit on the planet, commanding them to cease fighting and submit to human custody. Some obeyed immediately, relieved that the nightmare was finally ending. Others tried to fight on and died within hours. By noon, the planet was secure. The Valari emerged from their hiding places slowly, cautiously, unable to believe what had happened. For generations, the Krethak had been unstoppable. They had taken what they wanted and killed who they pleased. No one had ever beaten them. No one had ever even tried. Commander Lyris walked through the streets of New Dawn with tears streaming down her face. The cargo ship survivors had been brought to the surface to reunite with friends and family. Everywhere she looked, she saw Valari embracing each other, laughing and crying at the same time. Children played in rubble that had been a war zone hours before. Old couples sat on benches, holding hands, watching the strange human soldiers patrol their city. Elder Vossaran found her near the central plaza. His ancient face was peaceful in a way it had not been for years. "They saved us," he said simply. "Complete strangers from a world we had never visited. They risked their lives for people they had never met." Lyris nodded slowly. "I know I cannot understand it. When we sent that distress signal, I never believed anyone would answer. The Galactic Council ignored us. Our own allies abandoned us. But humans came. Perhaps that is why they call them Deathworlders," Vossaran said thoughtfully. "They come from a planet that tried to kill them every day, and they learned to fight back. They learned that survival requires helping each other. They learned that strength means nothing if you do not use it to protect the weak. In orbit, the Krethik reinforcement fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 37 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel ready for battle. They found the 4 human ships waiting for them. Weapons powered but not aimed. Captain Drake stood on his bridge, watching the enemy fleet on his view screen. His first officer looked nervous, but Drake remained calm. They outnumber us almost 10 to 1. The first officer said quietly, "If they attack, they will not attack." Drake interrupted, "Not today." The Krethak fleet commander, Admiral Zarex, stared at his tactical display with growing frustration. His ground forces were destroyed. His general was captured. The planet was lost. And he had received very specific orders from the Krethokai command before departing. Those orders said to avoid direct conflict with humans at all costs. The High Command had access to intelligence that most Krethik did not. They knew that the human ships in this system were not the extent of human military power. They were barely a fraction of it. Earth Command had hundreds of warships, thousands of smaller craft, and weapons that the Krethak could not even begin to understand. Admiral Zarax had been told stories about human nuclear weapons that could turn entire planets into ash. He had heard rumors about kinetic bombardment systems that could destroy a moon, and he had seen classified reports about something called a mass driver that could accelerate asteroids to near light speed, turning them into projectiles, capable of cracking a world in half. The humans had never used these weapons against another species. They had only used them on themselves, in ancient wars that nearly destroyed their civilization. But the fact that they had such weapons, and the fact that they had survived using them on each other, made the Krethik High Command very reluctant to provoke them. "Admiral," his communication officer said hesitantly, "the human captain is hailing us." Zarek straightened his uniform and activated the communication screen. Captain Drake's face appeared, calm and confident. "Admiral Zarek," Drake said politely, "welcome to the Valari system. I assume you have received word from your High Command about the current situation." Zarek forced himself to speak evenly. "I have General Korath has surrendered. The planet is under your control, correct? Now, the question is what happens next?" Drake's eyes hardened slightly. "You can challenge us. You can try to retake this planet by force. But I think you already know how that would end, not just for you, but for your entire species." Zarek said nothing. His claws dug into the armrests of his command chair. "Here is my offer," Drake continued. "Take your fleet and leave this system. Take General Korath with you. He is a prisoner, but we have no interest in keeping him. Tell your High Command that the Valari are under human protection now. Any attack on their worlds will be considered an attack on Earth itself. Do we understand each other?" The silence stretched for several long seconds. Finally, Zarek spoke. "We understand each other, Captain. The Krethik will withdraw." "Excellent. Safe travels, Admiral." The communication cut off. Zarek watched the view screen as his fleet turned and began the long journey home. Behind him, his officers exchanged confused glances. They had never retreated before. They had never surrendered a conquest. But they also had never faced an enemy like humans. News of the Valari liberation spread across the galaxy within days. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss what had happened. Representatives from dozens of species argued about what it meant, what the implications were, and what should be done. The Valari ambassador stood before them with her head held high. She no longer looked frightened. She looked proud. "When we called for help, you ignored us," she said, her voice ringing through the chamber. "When we begged for assistance, you looked away. You were afraid of the Kretho. You thought they were unstoppable." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The humans proved you wrong. 4 ships, 800 soldiers. That is all it took to destroy a Krethok occupation force and send their fleet running home." The chamber erupted in whispers and arguments. Some species dismissed the reports as exaggeration. Others demanded proof. But a few, the wiser ones, sat in thoughtful silence. The human ambassador, a woman named Elizabeth Torres, stood and addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen, my species did not intervene in the Valari system to prove a point. We intervened because innocent people were dying and we had the ability to help them. That is the only reason we need." She looked around the room slowly, meeting the eyes of every representative who would hold her gaze. "However, I want to make something very clear. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We have no desire to rule the galaxy or dictate terms to other species, but we will not stand by while innocents suffer. We will not watch slavers take children from their parents. We will not allow bullies to terrorize the weak simply because no one is willing to stop them." Her voice dropped, becoming quiet but somehow more powerful. "The Krethok have learned this lesson the hard way. I hope others will learn it without requiring the same education." The session ended without any formal resolution, but in the weeks that followed, something remarkable began to happen. Species that had been bullied by stronger neighbors started sending diplomatic messages to Earth. They asked for trade agreements, for cultural exchange programs, for military cooperation treaties. They asked for protection. Admiral Sarah Chen reviewed the incoming requests from her office on Earth Command. The list grew longer every day. Small species, weak species, species that had spent generations living in fear. They all had the same question. Would humanity help them if they were attacked? Chen leaned back in her chair and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who understood the weight of responsibility, but accepted it anyway. Commander Lyris returned to her people as a hero. The cargo ship survivors were celebrated across the Valari worlds, but Lyris never forgot the humans who had saved them. She kept a picture of Captain Drake on her desk, a reminder of the debt her species owed. Years later, when her daughter asked about the strange creatures in the picture, Lyris told her the story. She told her about the distress call that no one answered. She told her about the Deathworlders who came anyway. And she told her about the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy that day. Some species conquered through fear. Some species ruled through strength. But humanity had done something different. They had earned respect through compassion backed by overwhelming force. They had shown that true power was not about domination. It was about protection. And the galaxy would never forget it.